There we go. Good evening and welcome to the school committee meeting of Wednesday, September 4th, 2022. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on WHCA. If you could join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So the first item we have is an executive session with members of the Board of Selectmen that are here. So I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. David?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, we are in executive session. We plan on coming out of executive session at 6:30. All right, we are back in session, and better late than never, since I didn't announce why we went into executive session, I'll do so now, which was to discuss the deployment of security devices or strategy with respect thereof, as so the chair declares, and I declared. Okay, so we're now going to move into the regular part of our agenda, and I will turn that over to Jeff, because I know you said you might want to take some things out of order. Oh, we can do public comment. Yes, we can do that. Is anyone here for public comments? Okay. That's fine. Great. So there we go. I took care of my part.
So, yeah, very good. So I'm going to do I might bounce around in the superintendent's report, so just bear with me. But I am going to do a school opening update at first to kick it off. So Monday the 29th, we had our opening day for staff with our guest speaker of Adam Welcome. He welcomed us. Adam Welcome welcomed us. We recognized 34 new staff members on board this year, teachers. Also introduced our Director of Facilities, Tim Hawley, our Director of SPED, Mike Loesch, brand new, Gideon Gadet, our Director of Technology, and Whitman Middle School Principal, Brandon Frost. I also recognize, and I think this is important for everybody to hear, recognize Mr. Peter Nemi, who started his 50th year in the district. So he's been here since 1972. He will be retiring at the end of this year. I think after 50 years he can go. We also say goodbye to Ernie Sandlin, who officially retired. Ernie did get a very appropriate standing ovation by members of the faculty and staff that were present. Teachers then reported back to their buildings after we had a barbecue in the cafeteria hosted by food services and operations for their staff meetings in preparation of opening on August 31st. The elementary schools and preschool held their open houses on Tuesday, August 30th. AI3, which is our architect for the Whitman Middle School project, was represented at Conley and Duval, handing out information regarding their first community forum on the Whitman Middle School design, and that took place on Thursday, September 8th. The next meeting, I believe, is the first week, and I want to quote me, is the Monday prior to elections, which is November 7th at the Whitman Middle School. School opened on 8/31, which was Wednesday. Lots of happy, smiley faces, mostly from parents getting rid of their kids for the school year. I want to thank the Hanson chief, Jerry Thompson, and Mike Mix, PD and Fire, Tim Clancy and Tim Hanlon, for sending over their first responders with their trucks and cars to assist in welcoming our teachers and students back. It was great for kids to see the collaboration between first responders and teachers and administration. It was a very smooth opening, and it was great to see students in a post-COVID environment, really with little to no restrictions going forward. Technology update as far as district-wide, all teachers received new Chromebooks this year due to our network issues, as well as HDMI cables to connect those Chromebooks to our boards, our Promethean boards, and our smart boards. Our thin clients, which we don't have desktops in our district. Teachers have thin clients. If you remember back in 2016, we did that. Should be up and running, hopefully, by 10/1. And we did establish a guest network for Wi-Fi, which is WH Guest. And that will be, so anybody coming into our district right now can hook up on the Wi-Fi. Prior to this year, it was problematic. Just want to cover a little bit voting at Hanson Middle School. I know there was a couple of conversations about voting at Hanson Middle School, and this is directly from Mr. Tranter. You know, if you know Mr. Tranter, you shoot straight from the hip. For the most part, it was okay because of low voter turnout. It was a little hectic at the end of the school day with traffic flow. There were 2 police officers here, one which was the deputy chief. One was outside the gym and the other was inside the gym. The biggest problem was the rain. The gym classes were displaced and couldn't go outside. The auditorium was being used for band and chorus. The election, people had also set the stage up for poll workers, break and lunch, which we had to move. We made it work. The other issue is typically the day before an election, they set up early, like 11. This causes a problem for us. They should wait till 2:30. So it wasn't bad. Can we do it better? We're going to have to decide. The next primary is in March of 23.
Yes.
It's the presidential primary.
Yeah.
24,
March of
I'm sorry, March of 24. So that's the next one. So we don't have to worry this spring, but when you do the calendar, we have to make a decision. Hanson is a polling place, whether or not we feel safe for our students or not. We've navigated this, but some folks did bring it up. I wanted to address it with the committee and get it straight from Mr. Tranter. We've done it in the past. I don't know if we want to continue that moving forward. On September 28th, Chris Herron will be here for 2 sessions. Chris Herron is a former Boston Celtic, former Fall River basketball player who also played at Fresno State and is also an addict in recovery. He spoke to us once before in 2011, I believe, to the high school. He has a new delivery on addiction, and it's called First Day, where he talks about the first day of school for students. He talks about bullying. He talks about social isolation. He talks about the whys of addiction and drinking. 8th grade and we're going to do a session with 8th graders, freshmen and sophomores, and then juniors and seniors. School committee, it's in your packet. I also attached the First Day video if you want to watch and, you know, bring a box of Kleenex and watch it. It's pretty pressing, like some of the issues he deals with, and he speaks about how kids grow up with parents or siblings who have issues at home, and they bring it to school. So the First Day will be here on the 28th, and again, school committee are more than welcome to attend. Staff openings right now, I'm still trying to fill paraprofessional positions. Most of our professional positions, teaching positions are filled. So just giving you a heads up, I'm looking for a 1-to-1 para and long-term special education sub at the high school, 3 TLC paras and 1 language-based para at Indian Head, 1 duty aide at Indian Head, a 1 duty aide at Hanson Middle School, 2 ASD paras, but reference checks are going on right now at Duval, 1 inclusion, 2 intervention, and 1 1-to-1 at Duval, and 1 duty aide at preschool. So if people are out there watching and you're looking to see if you want a job as a paraprofessional, we're definitely looking. Some of these positions are working with a real needy population, but very worthwhile and very rewarding for you to take. And everything is on School Spring to apply. Yes?
Quick question. And those would be people who want to work mother's hours, so if they have kids at home,
Well, we say school hours.
school.
So, because we're not just working at, I'd love to get men that are non-moms out here too, or non-people that don't have kids, so.
My age is
Take it
showing.
school hours, right. Anyway, I'm looking for somebody that wants to work with kids. Coffee hours, I set up coffee hours already in your Google Drive. My coffee hours, the first one is going to be September 28th, 4:30 at Whitman Middle School. I'm going to do the same rotation I did, except reverse it. I left off at Whitman. I'm starting at Whitman this year and moving forward. Once a month at the buildings, and then more on those off months that I'm not at a building, I'm at the high school. I know we have 2 members of our Student Advisory Council that were here last year. We did hold an election for these folks for this year. Mr. Moriarty, the advisor to the Student Council, ran this election, so I'm just going to read what happened. Mr. Moriarty solicited through the news, email, and Twitter students in grades 10, 11, and 12 to run for the 5 student representative positions on school committee. Only 5 students emailed their interest. Dan did not hold an election, being that there was only 5. He made that choice on his own. He recommended those students to me. I did discuss this with David, who is now the school committee representative to the Student Advisory Committee to the school committee. That's a mouthful. Student Outreach Coordinator, I like that better. And we felt that there should be an election and include grade 9. One of the issues we had with not including grade 9 is I don't have their email addresses yet, because Gideon Cadet is just putting those together. So we will have that election. I did speak to the 5 members that did run already, and they assured me that they would run again. And over the next few weeks, we are going to host an election. And I asked Riley and Noah to come anyway today, because they did put their names in already. And I said they might want to speak a little bit today on what's been going on. But they're going to run, and we will have this group in place for the October 12th meeting. So I don't know, can I branch off and let just them?
You can do it, yeah.
So if you guys want to speak to anything, how your summer was, what's going on, you got a couple minutes.
Hi, as you guys might know, I'm Riley Getchell, and I'm running again for Student Advisory Committee. I thought it was really fulfilling last year to be on the Student Advisory Committee and to just bring up pertinent issues. And even just being back for a couple weeks this year, the school spirit is already noticeably better. I'm the president of one of the clubs at our school, SEEK, our environmental club, and we've had 5 to 6 new freshmen just in the first week, which has been awesome. So kids are already getting more involved.
Thanks, Riley.
Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Noah. I'm also running again, and I will be a senior this year, which doesn't feel real, but that's okay. And I'm honored to be here today, and I really hope to get the chance to be part of this committee again, because I feel that because there's so much more engagement this year, we will really be able to reach out to the students and get so much more feedback this year. Thank you.
Noah, before you sit, can you just give the committee and whoever's watching what you did this summer at the MASS conference?
At the MASS conference, I'm part of a statewide service leadership club called Project 351, where it's one representative from each town. And during the conference this summer, we actually had a couple incredible guest speakers, which were really moving. And I was given the opportunity to go up on stage actually in front of the superintendents and kind of express what I was looking forward to this year, as well as what challenges me in school. And what I said, I don't remember word for word, but the gist of what I said was that what challenges me in school sometimes is looking around and seeing the lack of understanding of how students accept each other, because there's been this gap within the past few years, and that knowledge of just how to be friends with people, how to have conversation has been missing. And I would really just love to help rekindle that relationships between students and just how to accept each other and just be nice within school. So I really hope that's one of my goals for this year, just making things a better community. Thank you.
Thanks, Noah.
Awesome
So
job.
just to frame that, there is 400 superintendents in an auditorium.
Just a small crowd.
Just a small crowd, and Noah was joined with, 6, 7 other students talking about their thoughts and philosophy, which was pretty cool to be, superintendent with one of your students up on stage. And it was pretty moving. So, and they also met us when we came in and gave us snacks and goodies, and it was really cool. So thanks, Noah, I appreciate that. And thank you for representing our district, both of you, and what you do. So, any questions for these 2 folks at all?
And I know we've had our culture group meeting, and our vice chair has really spearheaded a lot. Not saying anyone else hasn't, but this is a great way of how things come together and really build upon. Especially you 2, you are leaders. You have to be 35 to run for president and vice president, but you make a great ticket someday. But thank you, and that's what we need. And so appreciative, even spending even a small amount of time, during your summer, to do something like that. That's just terrific. It really is. Stand strong.
Any other questions for these guys?
Thank you.
Any question on my opening, about opening at all in the committee? Okay. So I'm going to bounce again because we do have some guests here today. Got an email we did as a committee from Mr. Coffey. Mr. Coffey, you here? I think I saw you walk in. Okay, Mr. Coffey's in the back and does a lot of work with our Special Olympians in Whitman and surrounding areas. So he sent us an email praising some of our students for their volunteer efforts with Special Olympics. And I think, and I'd like to do this with the committee and telling the public out here, if our kids are doing some great things out in the community, let us know so we can recognize them. And publicly and to their parents, and just make it known that we thank you. So I met with these students yesterday and today and invited them here with their parents. So I'm going to just call you up And I'm going to say a little blurb about what Mr. Coffey said, and I'd like you to just stand when I call your name, if that's okay. Bobby Baker. Bobby's working. Oh, he's working at the restaurant in the old Bella's in Rockland. So yeah, he told me this. So Bobby's an umpire. This is Mr. Coffey's words. An exceptional umpire. Bobby will be the crew chief for our league championship at the Whitman Middle School softball fields on August 7th. And yes, Bobby and Izzy, his sister who's in Florida right now, she couldn't make the trip, our brother and sister. So Izzy Baker, a 2022 graduate of Whitman Hanson, helped coach our floor hockey and softball teams. She was a soccer player at the high school and had little to no experience in either sport. She started with hockey and jumped right in. She helped with equipment and conditioning. She also played goalie at a couple of practices. She's a champion. Dylan Perot. I see Dylan. Okay, Dylan's an umpire as well, an exceptional umpire. Bobby and Dylan have umpired in Whitman Youth Baseball and are receiving great training. This is Dylan's first year with us, and he's been a great fit. So thank you, Dylan, for your volunteer hours. Are your parents here today, too? All right, thank you. Evan, I'm going to mispronounce your name, Scow. Evan's a student here. He's helped coach our softball, soccer, and floor hockey teams. Evan is an enthusiastic, compassionate, and sincere person. We are fortunate to have him. Evan belongs in special education and coaching. So you got your future already planned for you, Evan.
Hold on, just-
Yes. George.
Hey, if I add something?
Yeah, sure. Feel free. Can you come right up here, George, if you would, so you can be on the mic?
Oh, you should have. I'd have given you money for that. Evan is probably more dedicated than any volunteer I've ever had, to the point that Evan is not going to be a volunteer coach. He is going to be a regular coach. We've done a Corey on him, and he's been taking online training.
Right.
And next year he will actually be a member of the staff, and I have found out that at the present time he will be the youngest softball coach in America in the Special Olympics.
That's awesome.
By the way, none of these volunteers were forced to do this by their parents. In every single case, it was the kids' ideas, which to me was fantastic. I love when people help my athletes.
That's awesome. So,
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
thanks, George.
Thank you for all you do, George.
Yep. So the Mason Alexander, I know both brothers are here. I think both out of football practice, right?
Wait, still have the cleats on.
Mason coached our softball team for 2 years. He's one of those, what do you need me to do people? So I think you get a lot done there. And Jackson, like his brother, has coached our softball team for 2 years, and only wants to know what he needs to do as well. So congratulations, boys. Thank you for volunteering. We really appreciate your time. This is one of the things Mr. Coffey also said. All these kids have something in common. They don't think people with intellectual disabilities are weird. They're very comfortable around our athletes. Not one of all of them are with us because they were told to. They chose to be here. So it's important for us to know about these kids. I would like them to be recognized for their contributions to our athletes and the Special Olympics of Massachusetts and the towns of Whitman and Hanson. So thank you for all you do. Maybe we can get some more volunteers for you, Mr. Coffey, by doing this more and more. And please send, if you need those volunteers, shoot me an email. I can get it out on social media and Twitter, and hopefully you'll never need for volunteers again. So I just wanted to thank moms, dads, caregivers who are here, and the volunteers themselves. On behalf of my office and the school committee, thank you for what you do in representing our community, our culture of our kids, and making sure everybody feels welcome in their sport and activity. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, if you have somewhere else to be, you most certainly can go.
I do have a list because we had a couple more kids come on board.
Sure, George, you come up to the podium.
They're Whitman Hanson kids. Well, they're only 10 and 11, but
Give me that, and we'll get them here at another time.
this is for you. I thought you might enjoy that.
Thanks, George. And thank you for what you do, George. Coach, appreciate it.
I just retired.
All right.
Yeah, right.
I did. 30 years is enough.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it. And if you want to go, please feel free to step out. Moving down the list, in your packet, you have two documents, or multiple documents, but I'm going to read off of the Word document on student enrollment. Very positive over the past years. We've been able to really, I think, manage our class size, going from a time back when I was hired in 2010 to having classes at the high school of 25 plus, 26 plus at our elementary grades and middle grades. I think right now, Duval Elementary right now, I'll just go down the list for our folks because it's our taxpayers that are supporting us. Duval Elementary has 432 students. In kindergarten, we have 4 sections, 13, 13, 13, and 14. Thank you for full day K. Grade 1, 18, 19, 19, 18. Grade 2, 18, 17, 18, 17. Grade 3, 18, 18, 19, 18. Grade 4, 21, 21, 20, 22. And grade 5, 20, 19, 19, and 20. At Conley Elementary, 499 students. In K, 17, 18, 18, 18. Grade 1, 23, 22, 21, 21. Grade 2, 19, 18, 19, 17. Grade 3s are bubble right now at 25, 25, 25, 25. We're hoping nobody moves into grade 3 right now. Grade 4, 20, 20, 20, 19. Grade 5, 22, 20, 21, 22. Again, these are in your drive. Indian Head is 492 students. K, 19, 19, 19, 18, 18. Grade 1, 20s across the board, 5 sections. Grade 2, 17, 18, 19, 18, 18. Grade 3, 20s across the board. And then grade 4, 21, 18, 20, 20, 21. At Hanson Middle School, 449 students. Grade 5, still treated like an elementary at Hanson Middle, 23, 23, 22, 18, and 23. And what I did in grade 6, grade 7, grade 8 is break up in ELA and math, because those are our core right now. Not social studies and science aren't, but those numbers fluctuate a little bit. ELA in 6th grade, 20, 21, 21, 19, 21. And in math are the same. ELA in 7th grade is 18, 17, 16, 14, 13, 15. Math is 16, 15, 15, 16, 15, 15. And in grade 8, ELA is 21, 21, 21, 21, 20, 21. And math is 21, 20, 21, 21, 21, 21. Whitman Middle School, school of 504 right now. Grade 6 ELA is 21 or 22, 21, 20, 19, 20, 20, 20, 20. Math is 22, 21, 21, 20, 21, 23, 23, 18. Grade 7, 21, 22, 20, 22, 21, 21, 22, 21. In math, 21, 24, 21, 22, 22, 22, 22, 21. And in 8th grade, 20, 19, 19, 16, 22, 20, 20, 20. And in math, 20, 20, 22, 18, 17, 20, 20, 22. At the high school, we have 1,065 students, not including 36 CES students, which is our alternative after-school diploma program. Average class size is 24. They range from 15 to 29 in academic sections. Our PE ranges from 25 to 44, and health ranges from 25 to 32. Also, we have 102 preschool students. I did not break that up by half day, full day, or half day or full day yet, or tuition versus sped. That can come a little bit later. And then we have 31 out-of-district students right now that we pay for an out-of-district placement. Also in the drive is each building individual and every class. So you can look through as you want to see where people are at. But these are the best numbers that we've had as far as our regular class assignments. I also want to highlight, and this is important for us to know because it's financial and budgetary. As of right now, we have 192 EL students in district, 48 at the high school, and we have 1 teacher and 1 tutor, and we will more likely than not be getting another tutor. Hanson Middle School has 8 EL students with 0.1 FTE. with an AM consult, and these numbers can change because we are in the assessment period right now. They could go lower in some areas. Whitman Middle School has 30 ELs with 1 teacher. Conley has 34 with 1 teacher and 0.8 tutor. Duval has 62 with 2 teachers. Indian Head has 5 with 0.1 teacher, and pre-K has 5. Hanson and Indian Head have our most FELs, which are former English learners, which might not need service once they're eval. Languages that we are serving right now in this district: Arabic, Albanian, Cape Verdean Creole, Guittari, Haitian Creole, Polish, Portuguese, Spanish, Thai, Vietnamese, and Ukrainian. So again, when George and I were here back 12 years ago as principals, I can only reference in 2010, there were 6 ELs in our district.
6.
6. 6. District. And most were FELs. As it's grown, we're up to 192. Again, I think that number will probably be closer to 170 after we do our testing. We are getting students coming in from different towns that right now, primarily at the high school, don't speak English at all. We are getting students from Brazil coming in that speak 0. So we are working along, and don't be shocked if we're adding EL staff in fiscal '24 as we move forward. Just letting you know where they're at. Yes?
Do you know on average what tier the ELs are on? Or you said you're still in the evaluation process?
We're still in the evaluation period right now. Yep. So I don't want to misspeak that we are really in, but when I said are the numbers going to go down at the high school, probably not, because the preponderance of those students are really move-ins with 0 right now. So just to give the committee and the public an idea, and at a benchmark of 12 years ago, we were under 10. We're close to 200 right now. We're not receiving really any federal money yet. George is actively looking at that piece for ELs, if you want to speak to that. Go ahead. Because it's a tier system.
Right, so if I could, most of our students that we have now are in tier 1 and 2 that we're testing so far. That's the lowest amount, and they require direct services. That's why it's the need for staff. So you might see some kids getting services in different, with different grade levels, because the grade level doesn't necessarily matter. It's what their language acquisition skills are, and that's based on a 1 to 4 rating. When it comes to federal money, we are still connected with the North River Collaborative, so we're part of a consortium of schools, and basically what happens is you pool all your numbers together. The North River Collaborative runs that grant. It's a federal grant. It's called Title III, and then we receive portions of it in order to help with anything from after-school tutoring, even translation services, or some of the curriculum that they need. You notice we have a new position in the district, the Director of Equity and MTES, and in that is EL. So that'll come at a later date, but we do have a director who's actually making sure that we are following all the specifics that we need, and it's a good time that we have one because of this explosion in the student population.
Any questions on enrollment or that? Steve?
Jeff, just more of an observation. So when we were here to meet with you, school committee members, and we gathered out here for the touring of the school buildings, there were at least 2 or 3 people that came in, one who only spoke Portuguese, and they were looking for the high school office to do their enrollment and registration and whatever else they needed to do. So
if the committee remembers last year, we did add a community relations person who is really our translator, Felicia Barboza. We brought her on last year, midway through, maybe February-ish, and she's on, and she's working very hard right now, trying to get people in. But we do have a very, it's a change. We are shifting along the way to meet the needs of all of our families that are in both our communities right now. But just giving the committee a heads up, again, our class sizes are outstanding, I think, but we add the addition of students that struggle with language right now and curriculum. Our teachers are still working very diligently to make sure all our kids are getting what they need.
Well, I think that's an important point to make. I think that because all educators need to be SEI endorsed now, these students are coming into a gen ed classroom who might not, I mean, think of a freshman who is fluent in Portuguese but not in English, and they're in a classroom. So these class sizes are really helpful to that student, but also to the other students that we have, so that the teacher can differentiate and serve all the students that are there. It's not, I went to high school 20 years ago, but it was not like this. They had their own EL room and they really didn't come out, and that's not how it is anymore. And I think that also is really important when we're looking at these class sizes, to keep that this low so that all students can benefit from that.
Any other questions?
Really glad to see there aren't any 28, 29
Nope.
classes. We've done a lot of good work here. I want to just mention grade 3 at Conley. So it's you mentioned it. It's a bubble and it's got a lot. So that's certainly an inequity I see, while the other classes are smaller. And then in grade 7 between 2 schools, right, there is a noticeable difference in one school having consistently 7 more kids than another school. And that school has considerably more of the English language learners too. So if we can just keep an eye on that inequity there and how we can address students that are in those classes that are higher than the other school. And then just overall enrollment, the total, because we hear a lot about declining enrollment. And I don't remember, but I think you mentioned that, I haven't added this up, but we're hovering around 3,500?
Yeah, yes.
Right,
It
I
looks
know
like
October 1st is the official.
We had a dip last year of, I think, 160 students. I think we're looking at a dip of 35.
Yeah,
which is
it was
better than
down.
we were.
Yeah, it's been going down about 100, 130, so it's good to know we're closer to stable.
For
if we
our
can.
October meeting, once we submit our October 1st data, I'll have an exact number, because the towns both want to see that number as well when they start calculating the differentiate of assessment. So,
Right. Thank you.
any other questions on enrollment? Thanks. Memorials around the district in your packet. So a question came out, what's that? It should be. Michelle, we put this in the packet.
It's on the drive, too.
It's on the drive.
Yeah, it's on the drive.
Sorry, I meant drive. So a question came out about memorials, and actually Ms. Stafford knew one of the teachers that a memorial was outside of Mequon, and it came up about district memorials. And I tasked a college student over the summer to start looking into this, because it grew once we knew it was going to be a significant task. I knew it was going to be a significant task. And after July 29th, a lot of focus went away from different things due to our network issue. So this student has now correlated a list of memorials, and she's not done yet. She's away at Salve. She'll be back for Thanksgiving and Christmas to hope to complete the list of memorials. But in your packet, you're going to look at, I didn't even know we had half of these on campus or in district, and she's only done half the district. She did Hanson. And there's a lot out there. She hasn't done Mequon, and that's one of the things that she didn't include Mequon on this. But there are memorials throughout the district. Once this is completed, this document is completed, we'll publish it to the website. And I'm actually going to ask people who are watching, the 7 that are watching right now, live, but maybe on YouTube, if you know of something in the district, let us know. Because there are things like the rock outside of Mequon that maybe has no history because everybody's moved out or wherever. But Ms. Stafford called me today. She wanted to make sure her father's was on here, and it is, at Indian Head. And this is, again, a working document going forward, but it's pretty cool to see how many memorials we have to people, both, still around and have passed, that have a legacy within our 2 communities at our schools. So she added some pictures. We're gonna jazz it up a little bit when we release it to the public, but it's something, and I appreciate the question from that resident to say, hey, can you start looking at this? Because this was overwhelming to me. I don't have a lot of history, so we started going to, and I mentioned to Chris, Sue Moss, who has a lot of history in town, helping us out and helping CC out as she progressed through this project. So if anybody's out there and has some suggestions, shoot them to me as an email or a committee member, and we'll get to this and hopefully be done with this at the turn of the year in January or February. So that's that. Mr. Rogers, on cue.
I didn't even see him there.
Sneaking in. A little athletic waiver update and trainer update for the committee.
Good evening, everybody. First thing I wanted to bring to your attention, we did it last spring where we got a waiver for 8th graders to play softball And now in the fall, we had problems with enrollment with our girls' soccer team. We had 5 girls get injured to the point where they could not play this year. So in order to give the high school students an opportunity, we needed to get 8th graders to get a waiver. The MIAA goes through a process to do that. It's done by District 9, and we were able to get it. And I just wanted to maybe put something on the record with all of you that it's an understanding that through the superintendent and the principal, that when it is needed, that is what we'll do. We will only do it to preserve a program. It's never for competitive advantage. It's never to get a specific student to play. It is only to preserve a program that if you don't have those students, you couldn't have it. It worked out really well in the spring. We were able to have the softball team, and the girls really assimilated well, and it's working out well so far with soccer. I get the question a lot of times. I had a couple of the boys' soccer parents call me and say, well, if the girls can play, can the boys do it? And the MIA has very strict criteria that we have to fill out, and we didn't qualify to do it for the boys. And I really only want to do it when it's absolutely necessary to preserve a program here at the high school. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on board. The way that the form reads, it doesn't necessarily read that the school committee has to approve it, but it does say that the chairman of the school committee acknowledges that it happens, that the waiver was done. And I think we'll always report back to all of you that we're doing it, so you are all aware. So if your constituents ask why it is, that's why we have it. And the rule is that they have to play at the lowest level. Even if they were like a world-class player, they could only play at the lowest level that we offer.
So a couple things. So Bob had certainly reached out and I said, this is, these are the type of things that I want to make sure that the entire committee is aware of. So I think, as long as the committee doesn't have a vote to the negative, right, he'll continue to do that. Certainly, if he's making me aware, then you're going to hear about it at the next meeting, or the chairperson, hopefully going forward. And then I agree, wholeheartedly. I think the biggest thing, because I got this a little bit last year directly, so-and-so wants to play up. And it's like, no, this is not playing up. There's 6 people. You need 11 to make a team. We need to do something for the 6 that want to play. So for folks watching that are like, hey, this is a great opportunity for Sally or whoever that's a 7th grader to play up, that is not this, right? That is not the design of this program. So as long as we continue to do that, at least for myself personally, I think that's the right way to do it. But I think that's important for the community to understand, because it's really to try and create those opportunities for the people in high school. Certainly there's a nice benefit to the people playing, but it's not meant to, hey, let's have, so-and-so 7th grader play on a varsity whatever team. So, yeah.
And just one clarification, because some sports have just varsity and JV, and some have a freshman team established. So you talk about preserving a program, so it might be even a freshman program?
They don't usually like it at a school our size. They would be probably not inclined to approve it for a freshman program. It's usually, in our league, it's usually for JV. If there's been a long tradition of having the freshmen and you were like 6 freshmen short to have it, and it meant that the kids, we didn't have room for them on JV, then we would do it. But we would not do it just to establish a freshman program.
Okay.
But let's say that we didn't have enough for those freshmen to play JV, then we would probably ask the district if they would approve it.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Would you be seeking a formal motion? Or
I don't think we need a motion. I think it's just more of an understanding. I think, if we want to pass a motion that the school committee has to formally approve it, which would be against, I think, what MIA is looking for, we could do that. But otherwise, I think there's enough of a mechanism where, again, if Bob's calling me and all of you should understand, that is the process, then, it should just be coming as part of an athletic update to the school committee. So.
What I don't want to do is, potentially on that is have to have the school committee approve it, not have a meeting for a month, and we can't do it.
That's one of
What
those.
about the committee giving the rights and the power to the chair?
Isn't it already written that way, you said?
It's not. So that's how
But does the
MIA looks at it, but we don't.
No.
So
They don't need school committee.
Again, I think it's fine.
For co-ops, they require an actual vote of the school committee, which you did on the co-ops that we've had with swimming and hockey. But for the 8th grade waiver, they need the acknowledgement that you all know that it's happening.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you voted for the chair, someone else might be chair down the road, and they might be, well, I got the authority to sign this, and you may not hear about it until after the fact. So I kind of like the way the process is built today, because it kind of forces whoever's the chair to be like, wait a second, I think we should all be aware of this. And then, again, I think there needs to be doing the right thing, which is, when you called me, you're like, we got to make a decision on this. I'm like, do it, right? Like,
Yeah.
we can't not do this and put, some kids at risk from not doing something they want to do. So I think it's working, but again, it's just making sure everyone knows what's going on, understands the process, and is certainly aware of what we're doing. So, good.
Good with that? Do you want to talk about the trainer?
Yeah, so some of you may be aware that a week before, actually, it was at Athletic First Night that our trainer told me that she and her boyfriend were moving to California. She got a job and she was moving to California. Since that time, Signature Healthcare, and even all summer, Signature Healthcare was advertising. I was not advertising because I thought we had the trainer and we were all good to go. As soon as I found out, I have contacted every single college in the state of Massachusetts. I contacted each trainer. Most colleges have like 5 trainers, so I thought maybe an assistant trainer would want to do it. But I've sent out like over 100 emails. We have it on SchoolSpring. We have it on the MIA site. We are networking all over the place, and we have not been able to find anyone. We're not alone. South of Boston, there are 8 schools right now that don't have a trainer. I think what we have in place, I do have, so all that networking we did produce a candidate that is really qualified. She has her master's, she has passed the program. The only thing she has to do is take the test. The test is not until October, and then the results will be revealed or come out in November. So my hope, fingers crossed, that she will pass the test, and then she could become our trainer for the winter season moving forward. She has already interviewed with Signature. They like her, they tested her credentials, and they feel confident with her. The state and the national board changed the certification rules. They now need to have a master's, which is why we're in this crunch right now. The state, I've contacted the state too to see if we can get a waiver, and then we're in the process to find that out. We do have a very qualified person that is serving as an EMT at our athletic events. She has done a lot of per diem coverage at a lot of schools in our league, and she used to be a call firefighter at Hanson, and she was a former student of ours. Graduated, I think, in 2009. She served in the Air Force. She's very competent. She's actually at the end of her athletic training program. So aside from being qualified EMT, she's gone through all the clinicals that you need to be an athletic trainer. I feel very confident having her, but there are some limitations on what she's allowed to do just legally. But we're doing the best we can with that. I've also contracted with Peak Therapy, and it's worked out really well. An actual physical therapist comes over 3 days a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. We have a doctor, and it's actually one of our former students, Dr. White, Joe White, comes in. Yesterday it was a fill-in, and helps the students with rehab, more of what an athletic trainer might be able to do. And I've gotten really good feedback from the students, like, wow, he was really able to help me with these exercises to do that. So, in fact, Michelle Logan sent me a text and said he really...
I know, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, so it's good. The kids have really, they're rolling with the punches, the coaches are, and the parents have been really good too. It's just, it's not the best situation, but it's the best that we can do at this point.
One of the things is we still are partnering with Signature, correct?
We are. I mean, we're not going to pay, so they've always subsidized us, but they're not going to subsidize us now. So I did talk to the superintendent that I'm working hard to try to raise money. At Peak, when we talked about this arrangement, I was able to sell them the last spot on the scoreboard for $5,000. So that's going to help me pay those bills for a while. So funding might end up becoming a problem because Signature has always helped our funding. As you know, we don't budget for the athletic trainer. And it's something that superintendent, principal, and school committee is going to have to decide maybe moving forward as this crunch continues, how we would want to structure that position so we can attract the right candidates so our kids have the proper medical coverage at the games.
One of the things I just wanted to address before, Chris, is Signature had posted a $5,000 signing bonus that people questioned and said, the school can throw away $5,000? So we answered that. That wasn't us. We have a contract with Signature as a private company. They were putting an incentive out there. It wasn't the Whitman Hanson Regional School District saying, hey, come work for us and we'll pay you $5,000 more. So point of clarification out there, that wasn't us. That was through Signature, and still nobody bid, correct?
Correct.
So that wasn't our doing.
My question is just, going forward, are you hoping to maintain a relationship with Signature? Or?
I hope, yeah. It's been great. I mean, we get a full-time trainer for a half-time price right now. And not only that, but we get all the resources that comes with Signature. If one of our students gets hurt, they can get right in. They don't have to wait for an appointment. They have all kinds of resources for us as a school, and they pay a big chunk of it. And so I hope. They've been great. They feel awful about what happened. It's not their fault. I know some people are like, oh, it's not Signature's fault. Their employee gave them no notice and left. And that's what happened.
Any other questions for Bob?
Jeff, I just wanted to say one thing, because we did meet as a subcommittee with the Parent Athletic Advisory Council, and Michelle and Chris, Michelle and Chris were at it. And I just want to say the feedback that I got from the parents at that meeting was very helpful. We've been able to establish the parent pledge was redesigned a little bit. We have it out next to the old scoreboard now. If you look at the old scoreboard, it has the parent pledge and the Patriot League sportsmanship code. We have that on the screen during games in the gym. And an idea that I had at the beginning of the summer, and after talking to the Parent Athletic Advisory Council, I'm like, I'm going to try it. And we have a phone number where fans that are in the stands can text us if there's another parent that's yelling at the official, or they're yelling at the coach, or something's happening, and they just want to say, hey, I just want to let you know, come up to the JV softball field because this is happening. Because there's only one of me, and there's a lot of fields, there's a lot of things going on, and I can only be one place at one time. And I have signs that are going to go in the ground. They're like little yard signs like you see at graduation, and it has that phone number. And I think that was really helpful and in fact, now some of my colleagues in the league like, well, let me know how that works. And luckily, I've only had one person have to text this fall, and it worked out well.
Good.
If I could, just want to thank you, Bob, because I've gotten a lot of positive feedback as well. And I think our efforts are really to kind of raise the bar and establish a level of expectation for everyone. And I think the feedback I've gotten is just that people are encouraged that we're paying attention to these things, and that we're setting it as a priority. So I do want to thank you for your cooperation, and we're off to a good start, and it feels good to get the positive feedback.
Yeah, hopefully we can be a role model for other schools and how you handle that, so that parents do have something to do when you're at a game. I'm sure you've all sat at a game and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible what's happening in the stands. We went to our girls' basketball games, the playoff games last year, the way our girls were treated by the visiting fans at times. Chris Jones and I kind of got in an argument with one of the other principals because it was really awful. But it would be nice if every parent had that chance to be able to reach out when something like that's happening.
I will just second what Chris says. Thank you for meeting with us and being open and hearing our suggestions. I've seen some changes. I've gotten a lot of feedback, so I just truly want to thank you for being willing to work with us and only progress and move everybody forward, so thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Bobby.
Appreciate it. I got to get back to volleyball. They're playing well against Duxbury right now.
What's the score?
We won the first one, and now we're down 2-1, and we're in the third.
Okay.
4.
Thank you. Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you.
So moving right along, annual DPH-MA Massachusetts Controlled Substance Registration application. This is something that Chris has to sign off. We just, again, transparency, making sure the committee's aware. This is something we do annually. Lisa Tobin puts it through. I have to have Dr. Belcher, our physician, sign off on it. I sign off on it, and then Chris does. So I don't know if you need a motion.
Yeah, you get a motion, John.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Beth, you're still with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. You can go first, Beth.
Okay, yeah.
Steve.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Don.
Yes.
Glenn.
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Stephen.
Yes.
Hillary.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Yes.
Unanimous. Great.
Thanks. Thank you. So I'll make sure you sign. Michelle, do you have the original for Chris to shine today?
Yeah.
Great. Superintendent's goals. So basically, I gave you a draft of my focus areas. I'm looking for feedback through an email or a meeting with me. I don't want to go through this tonight necessarily, but realistically, my focus areas this year are going to be our strategic plan, which I've talked about. I'd like to have that done, committee approval, parent approval, folks, teachers, by June of 2023, and I'm looking at a 5-year plan. Safe and secure schools, I think it's a focus on we talked about technology. We have a technology director, a new facilities director, and the Whitman Middle School project going on. So I'm going to be involved in the facility technology and that piece of it. And again, I'm going to tweak the goal as we go forward, but I wanted you to see these focus areas and then provide me feedback. One of the goals we talked about over the summer, I know the school committee had 3 different initiatives they wanted to take on: culture, early college, and George, what was yours?
K-8 related arts.
K-8 related arts. And then the 4th was school start times. I took school start times on as a goal as the superintendent. We met yesterday for our 3rd meeting. And then social emotional learning. Talked a little bit about social emotional learning, but really about all kids this year, using Nikki in her new role to make sure that it's prevalent moving forward, especially post-COVID. Noah brought that up over the summer. It kind of triggered me to say, hey, look, let's look at us as a district and how we're servicing all kids. If Noah and his peers are talking about this within the Commonwealth, it's something we can definitely bring back to Massachusetts. So those are my 4 focus areas. I will present formal goals in October, but I'm more than happy to have a discussion with committee members, either email, phone call, or come on in, we'll have coffee over the next month. Chris?
I know you've only met 3 times, so I don't, but just initially, what's the sense of the group that you're meeting with in terms of start times?
We're in the process of data gathering right now, and coming out with different things. So areas of benefit is definitely the social emotional piece that I tied in right here. We know some research. I want people to present the research because it's bounced around a little bit. We also are looking, I will have Karen look at financial pieces of it. I actually excluded John because he doesn't have to be there yet, but not necessarily the pros and cons, but weighing it out to give this committee, and I set a tentative deadline, well, a hard deadline, December 9th. I want expectations as we formulate our budget, what we're looking at. So the committee, because this is going to be a financial decision. If I can make changes without finances, great, but I don't see that happening. But different people are looking at different things. People looking at the bus contract, people looking at reimbursables for the past 10 years as far as trends. People are looking at legislation, because there has been legislation talked about on Beacon Hill around start times for schools. People are looking at the social emotional pieces of that. So there are 12 members of this committee. Everybody has a task to come back on October 4th.
Thank you.
And I know you probably don't want to hear this portion, but is there any way to incorporate how many buses it would take and what the scenario would be if the district owned the buses? Therefore, it changes that cost factor quite a bit. And would we be able to run them, effectively? And, could that be something? Granted, I know we just entered into a bus contract last year.
We're in year 2.
Okay, so...
My first piece was, I can look at anything. My second is, the bus company can't hire bus drivers right now. I don't know if I can take that on in my organization. Just a flat out, I'm not sure. Because we're struggling now. I can't anticipate hiring 50 more employees or 30 more employees when first student who's a company can't hire people. The other piece, Trish, to answer your question, we also have to look at special education transportation. Because we have 61 students being bused or transported by van at different schools. So that has to be a piece, not necessarily a hurdle, but an understanding that they need to know if we make changes. But Fred, we've talked about the buses. We can absolutely look at it, but I think the initial cost is going to be something, I don't know that if the towns could afford, or we could bond out $12 million for buses.
Or we could lease them. I mean, I know there's quite a few different ways of...
So that's not something we talked about, but it's something I can banter around the committee if they want to research that going forward.
Just thinking of, different ways to afford things.
So those are the focus areas. Again, I just rough here. I'll submit those and get them out for October 12th moving forward. But these, I think, are things we talked about over the summer a little bit. I'm also going to be involved in the committee with Chris on culture, with George on K-12, and with Chris on early college as we move forward. So lots going on. I didn't put on engagement with parents because I've already got that kind of like, we've established that. So there's a lot of little things still moving forward, but these are the focus areas as far as goals that I want to have you look at and have me evaluated on at the end of the year. Questions at all? Okay. Transportation update. Over the summer, after some calls with Desi, Mr. Galvin kind of threw out, hey, I heard from Jay Sullivan that you're supposed to be at a 75% capacity on our buses. So I had John and Karen tweak over the summer, making sure we're at 75% capacity, and we are. We maybe weren't by a little bit last year. We are now with a $55,000 estimated saving in tiers because of moving things around. But for committee members to know, there have been more parent complaints about delays in buses right now, and where we can stop and where we can't. Our buses are full. And now complying with the legislation, making sure we do that, that's the feedback we're getting. So we've had to say no to some folks. No, I can't pick you up at your house. Buses, even at the high school, are more full now than they ever have been. That being said, we have seen a drop already, but we've established that every bus either has 75% or as a district, we're at capacity. Meaning, when we had a conversation with Jay Sullivan, if this bus is at 80% and this bus is at 70%, we're in compliance. So it's a 75% for the district, and we are now, and it is a guesstimate at $55,000 saving by rerouting the tiers. One of the conversations in my meeting is looking at the tiers for next year as far as start times and what we can do. And just again, bantering around, what did come up is a potential of talking to folks moving 6 through 12 on a bus, meaning one bus, all middle school and high school kids, or moving K to 8 on a bus. So we're going to be investigating a lot of that moving forward in the next couple months. But we are compliant with MGL 71, Section 71A. John and I went through it, spoke to Jay, and again, committee members might get some feedback because our buses are full.
So that's a question I have. So feedback that I have received has been my student is on the bus a lot longer this year than they were last year.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right.
45 minutes
right.
than last year.
And I said my initial response was I think that has to do with the reimbursement. So that can be okay. And Glenn, to your point, it's the Hanson kids, right? Because they're on for really, I have kids in my neighborhood.
3:15.
Right. So longer.
We had to readjust our tiers.
Right, and that's hard for some kids. That's hard for a kindergartner. That's hard for a first grader. It's hard for a fourth grader.
That's where the trouble happens on the bus.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
45 minutes?
Yes.
That's a long ride.
Yes.
We do have a few students there.
It's been longer. It's been an hour some days,
Yeah.
too.
And those are things that I think I understand that a lot of the things we're doing have financial implications and benefits and reimbursements. But when I'm at the soccer fields or my neighbors, I live half a mile from Indian Head, and neighbors are on the buses for 40 minutes because and that is problematic for kids. That does affect their social emotionalness going into school and coming home from school.
And then going right to soccer practice.
Right.
Not going in and having a snack.
Yeah.
This doesn't really come through when you're crunching the numbers, does it?
No.
No.
Well, so there's a couple things here. So one is, right, so we have to comply with that. That's a state regulation.
It's a law.
Right? So we have to comply with it. Now, if we want to go above and beyond, we certainly can, and maybe that's it. But I would also say, if you reworked the bus routes and you're getting the feedback, and I know you've started to do this, but, maybe so we don't kind of put ourselves in the same spot where, hey, we did this, and then we look at it a long while afterwards. Now would maybe be a good opportunity to maybe audit some of those and say, okay, let's go back and look, someone's on the bus for an hour. Wait a second, does this make sense? Do we need to, because I know all the routes had to be rebuilt, right? Because there was changes to rebuilding the routes and things like that for other reasons outside of this. But maybe based upon some of that feedback, that's something that can be looked at in terms of are there ways to readjust the routes and some of that. And if it's, if the public says, hey, we want everyone to have half a bus, then we can also do that too, but there will be a financial cost to that. So, right, we go to 100% reimbursement for.
Right. I understand. And again, this is something that, Karen had said, she goes, traditionally this is what we did. We throw all the kids in Versatrans, and this is how it came out. And I think I don't want to say we were spoiled by that, but we had more flexibility. Now I'm compliant with the law, everything goes in, and it spits out the most accurate, quickest route for as they go, and that's where we're at. Now, that being said, if kids don't take the bus, she potentially could pull them out, but they have to have a seat. You know, right now, again, that regional piece of everybody has to be on it, that's what she did. By the directive of me, put everybody that you have to put on, even if they tell you they're not riding the bus. Legally, we have to put you on and hit that 75% capacity. So we'll have her look at it as we dig out in September, moving forward. That might adjust routes too, that kids might go, oh, I got picked up here. It'll be a work in progress as we go.
Done.
Thanks. Along the lines of, does it make sense? I heard from a parent of a Whitman middle school child, and I wasn't familiar with our policy, I think policy, or transportation, guideline? Okay. So our guideline for the district is walkers in the elementary school would walk from 3/4 of a mile to the school, if they lived within 3/4 of a mile. Once they get to middle school, our guideline for our district is you walk if you live within 1.5 miles of the school. And in Whitman, the town provides crossing guards, and sidewalks are available. So this family that reached out to me, their home is located 1.4 miles from Whitman Middle School. So if you come out of the school, take a left down Route 27, head towards Brockton, you go all the way down 27, there's a sidewalk, and then turn into Old Mansion Lane. Their home is in there. That student walks, but everyone else in that neighborhood has a bus stop. And that bus pulls in, goes by their house to pick up the students in that bus, in that neighborhood. And the other children say, why aren't you at the bus stop? Because I have to walk. So I would ask us if we can revisit that guideline. You know, does it make sense, 3/4 mile to 1.5 miles? Or if we can just, you know, review that. Because, you know, sidewalk along Route 27, is it safe? Is there a crossing guard? Yes. It's a long way.
So I would ask that the committee can revisit that, but we also take into effect what the town would be as non-mandated as far as what they want to pay for, because they're following our guideline when we submit that to both to those communities. I don't disagree, because that's a tough one. And I asked that question. I said, so the bus stops right in front of this kid's house? Yes, because the other kids walk to that bus stop because they're 1.6 away.
A couple houses over.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So I understand. I asked
It's
that
tough.
same question.
It's
So I
tough.
think
Yeah.
it's something we can revisit.
So long bus rides, not okay? Long walk, yeah. There's always someone.
I was a walker growing up, so I know what that's.
You know, and I would just ask the public to, you know, understand the compliancy that we have to go forward in this, and understand the financial pieces of if we make an adjustment to, if we start looking as the committee saying you're going to bus kids 0.75, those secondary kids 6 through 12, 0.75 to 1.5, is the town going to reimburse as non-mandated, because we're in that non-mandated under 1.5 miles. So again, I encourage that conversation. We can do that.
So maybe, I got Glenn and then Fred, and I know it gets public, but so maybe, because I wasn't aware until some of this was back and forth, I'm not sure the other committee members were, but in terms of like that guideline and what is or isn't there, so maybe that's something we could just share with the committee so we can all kind of see it and then kind of go through what that looks like and maybe have a second conversation about transportation, but go through that guideline too, because, yeah, like you, I've always just been told the 1.5.
And actually, one follow-up, this parent actually attended town meeting last May, and because it was outlined as an article and we went through this discussion, this parent was thrilled. I'm going to get a bus now. Whitman was going to bus within 1.5 miles. And she voted yes. Voted yes for it, and then was told, no, but you're a walker because you can walk. So I'll just...
Glenn?
Okay, it was two things. There's a flip side of that. He is also, he's the first pick up in the morning, so we get him on the bus earlier. So there's a good side to that. And he's so late because he's the last drop off. So I understand how that works. But when you said whether they are driven or not, they're still put into the equation of the percentage. Because I have kids in the neighborhood who've never sat on the bus once.
Correct.
But they're on that bus.
But they have to be, yes.
As far as we're concerned, he's a bus rider.
Correct.
Okay.
Because the law states that any student in a regional district outside of that mileage...
And there's no way around that?
Nope. because if they wanted to get on that bus, they could.
Obviously, if they sign something saying we're never going to, or we don't take the bus.
And once we build that route around that, if that changes?
Because I'm pretty sure that I will be driving him way more often, or picking him up at least, way more often.
And I think if we want to have I hesitate on a subcommittee, but we could have a working group, that we could talk about this. I mean, I can do that, so I can put something.
Why don't we, I mean, let's hear what Fred.
Well, and actually through you to Don, I know my kids were in the same boat in the Sportsman's Trail area, and there were 2 or 3 different carpools. We used to drive the kids down, used to let them off, and they used to walk through that little piece of woods in the dead end right before that, and we have a crossing guard there as well. If you want to have that parent reach out to me, I'm glad to try and reach out to anyone in the neighborhood and see what there is for carpools and see if they can hop on, with that. I'd be more than glad to.
I think the question was more, I voted yes for an article of $200,000 of non-mandated busing, people who live within a mile and a half, but I'm not getting the bus, so who's getting the bus for the $200,000 that I voted yes at town meeting?
Right. Well, the article, I addressed that article with the interim town administrator as well, and it was not a well-written article in the way it was presented.
But thank you, Fred.
We can look at that, absolutely.
Go ahead, just name and
I'm
address,
Leila
please.
Donovan, and I live on Old Mansion Lane. The bus does not come into our neighborhood.
Okay.
I don't know what that tells you.
You get the little ones, though? For the little kids?
For the little ones, yeah. For middle school, it does not.
Okay,
The bus stop
because
is
that's
right at Edwards Professional. It does not come into my kids'
Something around the ice place, right? We talked about this today.
So as a result of our making sure we're ensuring our 75% mandate, the bus in question, if you think about the Toll House or where Burger King and CVS is on route, the intersection between 18 and 14 Auburn Street, the bus starts there. It goes all the way down there, which is if you'll come up where the roller rink is, so if you think about it. And once the bus in Whitman gets to the roller rink, it actually enters Brockton. It's now picked up everybody on the right-hand side. It then takes the right in Brockton, coming back down on Temple, and then when it gets to the professional building where the ice place is, it turns around in the ice place professional building, and it does not go down Old Mansion. The person in question lives right across the street from the ice place on Old Mansion. So the bus turns around in the professional building and then heads back the same way to pick up everybody on the right-hand side. So that's the issue. Because we had to readjust our bus routes and things like that, you now have longer routes, more kids walk to a convenient area for the bus to pick them up to save on time, and you go from there. In Hanson, the biggest issue is we had to restructure some of those buses, and depending on what part of Hanson you live in, I pick you up first on the right, and then on the reverse, I drop you off last on the left because we don't cross routed roads. So that has happened. There's been difficulties at the Indian Head. There's been difficulties going from the high school to the middle schools especially. What they tried to do in Whitman was, and what the work was that was done, was we tried to say, okay, if there are 8 buses going to Conley, just bear with me if you can, abstractly. If there are 8 buses going to Conley, 4 of them would not have middle school runs. They would just have high school to Conley runs. So I can get those kids from the high school done, we shoot right to the Conley school, so we'll be ready to pick up those kids. So the other 4 buses that have to do the middle school in Conley would have some lag time. Pick those up, get back out. Conversely, they did the same thing at Duval. It is not ideal, but that's what we have right now. I will say from doing bus duty every day in the morning, you are getting tighter buses coming in now in that first half hour. The first drop-off was 6:43 to like 7:04, and right now we're in like 6:38 to like 6:50. So they are starting to pick up and know the routes a little bit better, but there have been some significant cuts.
Quick question. Fred. So can a student that's in middle school walk over to the ice machine and be able to get on a bus?
No, and it depends where you live. If you live past 1.5 miles, that's what they're
So
telling
if you live down in the corner of Old Mansion somewhere, you can walk over there.
That's your designated bus pickup.
Okay, and you're passing a student who might be 1.4 miles.
Yes.
Technically.
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, I would think that somehow we got to be able to look at this. And
I will say this.
You know,
we've
if it's
held fast, we've talked to our safety officers, but you're looking at a can of worms for all of those things that take place. I mean, you guys make the rules, so, but you're looking at a can of worms, and you're not going to have savings, and then you're not going to, if I have to add buses then you're going to run into the 75%.
If you have to add buses, but how full is that bus?
The middle school runs it tight. The middle school runs very tight.
So that bus is more than 80% capacity?
I mean, to be honest with you, I know a lot.
So I think what I would suggest is maybe spend some time, right, not necessarily here, because we can certainly have a meeting to go through the bus routes, but we're going to need to go through all of them, not just one. But go through all of them and look through it. I think if maybe folks can just give a little bit of time. I know it's frustrating, but we are, not that far into the school year, so let's give it a little time. I know there's issues with drivers and routes and learning new routes and all that good stuff, but I think if we can give it some time, but also have the commitment that, hey, we need to look at this and see if there's ways to make it better.
I agree. I would just say that we're sticking to our guideline right now, because if I move to one, I have a domino effect. What's 1.4, what's 1.3, and I think I would love to bus everybody, wherever they are. But I want to make sure that we're not doing something that we're absorbing within our budget. So.
Yeah, but, and I'm sorry, if we could please look at it, because, I mean, it doesn't matter to me personally, but we're talking about kids, and their friends are walking right by their house in order to be at the bus stop. And if there's room on a bus that we can accommodate a kid, I just think that, we take it on a first come, first serve, if come, how do you do it type basis. But gosh, we got to try.
I will say in the last 20 minutes, you've all put a lot of pressure on the bus transportation company by you talking about your goal and start times also. So I just ask that there's some grace in being able to pump out all the different scenarios too.
Yeah. No, I think it's something we need to probably look at. It's definitely a point of concern, but at the same time, it needs to be done thoughtfully, right? Because sometimes a quick reaction then creates another reaction on this.
So if you do it for one, you got to do it for anyone else who wants it.
Yep.
I think my request was just to look at that guideline where we change from elementary to middle school. Now we have the expectation of the 1.5 miles as a walker, as opposed to the 3/4 of a mile a walker. Maybe review that. Maybe it's 3/4 of a mile for middle school too.
Review the education that we then tell people what we are.
Thank you.
That hasn't been something we've done.
Right.
Yeah. And that was kind of my point in bringing it up. Like the chatter at the soccer fields has been this, so having the information and giving people the proper information instead of just going to social media and pontificating of what it could possibly be. That's all, just clarifying. So I think that's important.
Good.
Thanks.
Regional Agreement Committee, yes. So last meeting we voted the creation of it, which is good. We now have, I think, the task of having we should populate it with the 2 school committee members. And then I think the other thing that we need to do is we probably need to circle back with both towns. So my understanding is that both towns are presently utilizing interim town administrators. And so thinking about how that works. So I think for us, I think we're all looking to have something hopefully in place for the May town meeting. But at the same time, I think the timing has to be thought out to make sure that if we're going to have town administrators in the process, that we're thinking about, how they fit in and do we have folks there. I think that's more of a decision for the selectmen and select board than for us, but I'm just kind of also setting the expectation that if we put a couple school committee members on there today, I'm not sure we're necessarily going to start doing work, in a week. We may have to have some conversations with the town to see how that goes. So in terms of the school committee members, I think we said 1 from each town. I have a feeling probably if we asked, everyone is willing to do it. I'm going to go out on a limb. So we can do this a couple different ways. So one, if we want to leverage roles, and use like a chair, vice chair to do it, we have 1 from each town. We can certainly go that way. Alternatively, we can also just do nominations and roll call votes and have a majority from whoever, the majority for the school committee votes for Hanson and the majority from Whitman, and do it that way. So we got to select them somehow. So I'm kind of just throwing that out as what is the committee's pleasure? Fred?
On the second to last committee that we had, and it was done by chair, vice chair, because there was one from each town.
And I also think from an expectation, so I think this is important, the expectation of the role of these school committee members should be to represent the committee, which means they should be going to the meetings, understanding, and then bringing it back to the full body, because it's not it's not a charging of authority to just do whatever, because it's going to come back to the school committee anyway. So these really should be more of a liaison role, but again, we can do it however, and whatever the committee would like to do, we'll do.
And my statement does not negate the fact that obviously I still would like to be.
Like I said, I think we have 10 people, but we have 2 spots, so we got to figure it out somehow. However you'd like to do it as a committee.
I'd be willing to open it up if people want to raise their hand and say they're interested first, so we know who's interested before.
Sure. So how about just as a consensus without any type of binding vote? Who in Hanson would like to be on the regional agreement committee? I'll raise my hand.
But I would also defer to you.
Right, I'm just deferring to you.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to defer. I think the question is who is interested.
No, like, I would be interested in doing it, but I think there is value, and I think there's value in the chair and the vice chair of the school committee representing us as a whole in a bigger committee with representatives from both towns. I think we as a school committee voted you two as the chair and the vice chair because of our confidence in your abilities, and sending you off to represent us in this committee that is a bigger thing for both towns, I think makes the most sense.
Okay. And on the Whitman side, who would be interested? So 3. So again, I'm going to defer. We have to figure it out as a committee. So we can either make a motion to do roll call votes and nominations, or we can make a motion to do whatever you'd like. So
We had 3 from Whitman, Chris?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it was. I think it was those 3. Yes, this side of the room is very excited.
There's 3 people looking for 1 spot. It only makes sense to have a vote, in my mind.
We can do it again, I'm looking for a motion from someone as to how
I'd like to make a motion to take a vote to appoint the members of the rec.
So we will use that type of, so we'll just to define the process, so this is what we're voting on, and we can refine this however we'd like, but basically the way we'll do it is we'll ask for let's just do it like we did for
Beth?
Beth, were you interested?
No, thank you.
Well played.
Did you want to vote on that motion though, before you went to?
Yes.
Yeah, but no, I think I'm trying to explain what we're voting on, right? So the motion is to vote.
Voting?
Totally crap, right? Exactly. Thank you, Glenn.
Welcome
Yeah.
to the table.
Exactly.
That's how it's going. It's good. We're voting on voting.
So we're voting on voting. We're voting on taking a vote. So are we all comfortable with the process will work? We'll look for a nomination in a second, and then we'll just go around. We need to do it independently, 1 for Hanson and 1 for Whitman. Does that make sense? So we'll do 1 set of voting, nomination, vote for someone from Hanson, 1 nomination second, and then we'll just do a roll call vote, and whoever has the most votes.
So are we voting on this process right now?
No. I'm just making sure we're voting on the process. Yes. Does that work?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Does anyone have any? Everyone's good?
So the process wouldn't be like with Fred, Chris, and David, that we'd go around and everyone would say one name?
Well, right, because are they already did they self-nominate by volunteering?
I don't know, because we didn't do that. We were just doing consensus conversation, so we need to do that, exactly. So everyone's good with, like Glenn said, voting to vote, yes? All right, so we'll move to a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. David?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Chris? Fred?
Yes.
Beth?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now we'll open it up to nominations for, we'll
Nominate Chris Howard?
Second.
for Hanson then.
Yes.
Clarify. Anyone else interested? Okay.
You mean any nominations?
Any other
for
nominations?
Hanson?
Yes. Okay. Then we'll move to a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. David?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Fred? And Beth?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we have a Hanson representative. Let's see if we can do the same.
I nominate Mr. Scriven.
Okay.
Second.
So we have Chris with a nomination in a second.
I'll nominate David.
David? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, multiple seconds, good. Anyone else?
You want to be nominated, Fred? I'll nominate you.
Doesn't really matter, the cards aren't going to fall, so.
Okay.
It's up to you.
No, I don't think.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so hearing no other nominations, we'll close that and we'll move to a roll call vote. So I'm just looking for either a Chris or a David. Steve.
Chris.
Michelle.
Chris.
Don.
David.
Glenn.
Chris.
I'll vote Chris. David.
Myself.
Hillary.
Chris.
Chris.
Chris, me.
Fred.
Chris.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a
Beth.
Oh, sorry, Beth.
Yep.
Sorry, Beth. Sorry, Beth. Apologies.
That's okay.
I love roll call votes. I love roll call votes on voting and voting, and then
Great.
And the phone.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask for a raise.
After all that, we have the chair and the vice chair.
All right.
I'll double that.
So we have a Hanson representative, we have a Whitman representative.
Yep.
We'll figure it out. If the committee's so inclined, I'll just probably reach out to both chair folks on each board and just say, hey, we've done our process. What's your pleasure? And report back accordingly. So I think they need to do town administrator, select men or person, and town administrator, right? Those were those the other, or was the town administrator not voting?
It was, the way I remember it,
Oh, sorry.
and we'll go back to the minutes. It was
voting, seven
six voting.
non-voting.
It was six voting. Okay.
It was town administrator, 2 select people, and 2 school committee members were the voting members.
Correct. So then this is why that whole town administrator piece is relevant. And then citizen at large, we can ask
Non-voting
them to
member.
populate, or do we want to populate? Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
I think we left that up to them.
We can leave that up to them. Okay, great.
And then 2 FinCom members, 1 from each town, correct? Or was it 3?
I'm pretty sure the 7
for each.
non-voting was 2 FinCom, 2 citizens, and then you, George, and Stanford.
Yes, that's the way
Right.
I remember.
If I recall correctly, in the past, we did not even have a town administrator on the committee, whether voting or non-voting.
Right, and I think that's how we
that-
voted.
That's how we
Right, right, correct. So
Might
maybe
be
that
needed now.
won't be as big of an issue because they're non,
They were voting.
oh, but they are voting. So maybe if we go back to the selectmen and select boards and they say, hey, you know what, let's make them a non-voting member, however they want to do it. So I'll give them an update on this is what we did, this is where we're at, we'd like to move this forward as soon as reasonably practical. What do you think?
Can I just ask a clarifying question
Sure.
as far, because you made a statement earlier about how it's not like a power grab, so to speak. I'm using not the term used. So the regional agreement would come back to us to ultimately vote on, or would the vote, right? That's,
Correct.
I'm understanding.
So,
Okay.
right, so the process is the agreement committee would vote on it,
Yeah.
right? We're
send it back.
we're removing, if you remember last time, it was the regional amendment agreement. I think it was originally a regional agreement committee, and then it was a regional amendment agreement committee, and now we're back to the regional agreement committee. So the regional agreement committee would vote, obviously trying to push something out, and then the school committee needs to vote on it in full, and then it needs to go to both towns. So,
Goes to DESI first.
I'm sorry, it goes to
Yeah.
DESI.
Right.
DESI for
So,
approval.
yeah, nothing gets
School
passed then.
committee, and then it also has to go to town meeting. So just by that process, the boards of selectmen, select board have the review of getting it onto town meeting warrant. So it goes through pretty much every layer. Everyone that wants to participate is going to participate, including officials, and then ultimately the townspeople, because they have to vote at a town meeting. So, yeah.
But you would
Plenty of-
hope, I don't know, you would hope that with all those voices on the original committee, that the rest of the process would kind of, obviously approval through DESI is past us, but if we have voices from all those pieces, then hopefully the other processes would be smooth, or am I just,
You never know.
right?
Maybe.
Okay, yep.
Maybe.
But the positive on this agreement was a lot of legwork was done from the old agreement.
Okay.
And it was approved by the school committee and then approved at town meeting and then taken away. So there are nuances, I think, that the regional agreement committee has to dig into.
Yep.
But a lot of the legwork, like removing McQuon and removing Park Street and all those things are gone. So from the 18 agreement that was modified in 91.
Yeah. And I do know I had said it in the past, but
Mars,
probably
yes.
taking
We'll
that
talk about
document, the men from Mars, and just making sure that everything's updated law and lawful.
Okay, thank you for helping us get through that. Where do you want to go next? 5-year plan? Okay. John? Nice and loud.
Not too loud.
We didn't bring the other speaker.
I didn't bring that.
That's okay.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So they have a handout?
Do folks have handouts?
Yep.
Looks like this.
Do they have handouts?
Yes, I have.
No, I meant folks in the audience. Sorry, I know you, it's halfway through.
I was
I know
like,
you
yes,
have it.
folks.
Oh, I'm pretty sure you have it. Just so there's no way they're going to follow along
Oh, come
without the
on.
document.
That would be fun.
Without the document, there's no way to follow.
Giving a quick overview of when we get the documents in place. You don't have anything, I guess. But just the budget subcommittee's been meeting the last year, maybe, I guess it's been, just talking about this 5-year plan and what would be in it. It has gone through several iterations. So what's being presented tonight by me is going to be just kind of a first pass to start the discussion. It's an overview. It has a lot of assumptions in it, and it's a working document ready to be discussed, and it's kind of this is the first time bringing it out to everybody. It's been mentioned several times in passing and at different meetings, but this is the first time where it's actually been given to everyone to look at and discuss and talk about later on, I guess. If you're looking at the first page, it says, and looks like this, it's the 5-year forecast level service budget assumptions. So the first page is the assumptions page. It's a list of every assumption that I made, and working with the budget subcommittee. Made of a lot of assumptions. You may not agree with them. You may agree with them. I don't know. You have to start somewhere, so there is a number in there for assumptions. The way to read this, if you're looking at it right now, would be the overall WHRSD budget increase in dollars in fiscal year '24. Given the rest of the assumptions that are in the document, would be, I'm going to round the numbers off, $1.8 million or 3.13%. So that's up the top. Would be the budget increase.
Can I find that?
And there are, again, a lot of assumptions on the assumption page, but they fall. The big ones are, if you turn to page 2, with the expenditures. The expenditure assumptions and all the functions are 3% for administration over the next 5 years and 4% for all other expenses other than what's mentioned here. So that's kind of the starting point. You say why 3%? Well, the superintendent felt that was a good number to start with and a number that he could sustain over the 5-year plan. So that's a major assumption there. The second assumption, which is its own packet, is debt. I had to put in numbers for debt. I assumed a lot of stuff that's in the second packet that related to debt. I haven't met with either of the towns at all to talk about these numbers. They're just starting point numbers only, based on things that are in the document. Another big assumption is student count, because the difference between the way the agreement is, it's based between the towns of Whitman and Hanson based on student count. So that is based, it's on the bottom of the second page of the assumptions page, and that's based on the NESDEC, which is the New England School Development Council. That's the NESDEC enrollment that we had done. I'm looking at the superintendent, I think it was last year, 2020, I think 2020. Those amounts are right from that report. And those amounts are also, as we get further on, the breakout of those student amounts are the breakout of Whitman and Hanson based on that report. That's key. That's a big deal. Percentages are based on what that NESDEC student enrollment is. That may or may not be true. We'll see how it goes. But that's an assumption for further discussion. Minimum contribution increases. The Hanson and Whitman are in the future are going to have to increase their required minimum contribution to get rid of hold harmless. We're going to have a whole meeting probably about what hold harmless is. And very quickly, hold harmless is, I think we've talked about it in other meetings, but because of changes in state aid formula, this is my kind of digest of how to say it, the district's currently receiving more than it should in Chapter 70 education. However, the state has said that they will not reduce our Chapter 70 aid based on the new formula. They'll hold us harmless by the amount that they would have had to reduce and they're going to increase the required minimum contribution over a period of years until we get to the point where the new formula works. Again, I've tried to explain this a few times. That's the best, my newest attempt. I don't know if it was the best one, but...
Isn't it predicated upon enrollment? Primarily?
Yes, that also, so there's a...
I mean, that's most of the reason why we're in the predicament we're in.
Yes. So again, hold harmless is going to be, we could be here for a while to talk about that. I'm trying to keep it high level, but you're absolutely right, yes. So that's another big assumption. And then state aid increases are going to be minimal as long as hold harmless is in effect. I think the chair has used this analogy in the past where, if you remember your fractions, if 50% of the budget is state aid, 50% of the budget is operational assessments. If you want to get a 3% increase in the budget with a 0% state aid, the assessment has to go up 6%. So did that make sense? I remember if everyone remembers their fractions. In a half and half budget between state aid and operational assessments, if state aid is 0 and you want to get a 3% increase in the budget, town assessments would have to go up 6%. That's just the math of fractions. So state aid is essentially 0 until we get out of this hold harmless. So that's it, although it's not an exact number, that's a close approximation of what would happen. And I don't know if that helped or hurt, but I get what you're trying to say.
Can we let him go through it and then we'll do questions?
It's directly related to what he's on right now.
Yep.
Okay.
The $60 per student increase over hold harmless. The SOA is what, $40 next year?
Yes.
So we're anticipating legislation, to be more.
So that's what we got this year, and that was one of the assumptions on the sheet here, is that we would continue, that the legislature wouldn't drop it. But yes, they could go back to 40, they could go up to 70, they could do anything.
Right, but SOA has the benchmarks.
Yes.
So it went, I think next year it goes to 40.
Yes.
That's what they quote-unquote guarantee us anyways.
Yeah, I think every assumption on here could be discussed, and I think could be rationalized one way or another, and we could come to a consensus, and I'm hoping that in some meeting, a series of meetings, we'll do that. That's kind of the whole point of getting everything out, so everyone can see it and they can have their own point of view. So I'm stating what I have, and you can say, and I'm not saying it's right, I picked a number, and very reasonable is go with the $40 number.
Because traditionally we've used the governor's budget, and the governor's budget would use that Student Opportunity Act dollar amount.
Yes.
Did you have something?
Yeah, to follow up with what you said, John, about any increase to our budget right now falls on the towns 100% because we're projected to not get any increases in state aid.
Again, I'm rounding the numbers up, but yes.
Right. What?
Almost 100. Oh, not quite 100, right?
Right. So I hope this year we can look more at how we do increase our state aid, and it is possible because we have the benefit of the Student Opportunity Act, and I really hope that we can have a more in-depth dialogue and maybe even get some help in understanding our Chapter 78, because it absolutely starts with enrollment, and that's why I continue to talk about how do we keep our kids here and get more kids. I do know over the past 5 years, Abington has gone up 105 kids. Bridgewater Raynham has gone up 130 kids. So towns are doing it. They're stabilizing and increasing enrollment. If we can do that and at least stabilize our enrollment or add a few, like we've done with full day K2, the Student Opportunity Act over the next 6 years is increasing the foundation budget. It's recognizing and increasing funding for our health insurance costs, for ELL, for special ed. It's putting money back and increasing that budget overall at the state. So I think, over a period of 2 to 3 years, it's possible we can shrink that hold harmless and start to realize some more aid coming in on top of the $25 million we're already getting, which is a lot. So that's all all I ask of you, Chair and Superintendent, that we can, really look at our specific numbers, our foundation budget, because it is on the DESE site, and it does say the value of each student by grade and how it all adds up to our foundation budget minus our minimum contribution.
Yeah, and I mean, look, and David's now helping chair the budget subcommittee, but I think one of the things, right, we kind of started to talk about is we need to have that hold harmless night, right? Because we did a couple sessions last year, and one of the questions, and so this is where I think we need to all kind of do this together, but one of the questions we spent some time on was enrollment. And I remember vividly asking the question, like, so if we increase our enrollment, we can start to claw out a hold harmless, and the answer was, well, no. Because you have other factors involved, like you have to look at, property values, and you have to look at income levels, and so even if you rose your students, you're still not quite getting out. So, I'm hoping kind of where you're going is right, but I think, like, to me, there's no value in having that conversation tonight. What we need to do is probably do a deep dive, and we can avoid, who was it, Rob? Rob
Curtin.
Rob O'Donnell.
Rob O'Donnell. We just invite him to a meeting and go through it and kind of all go through that together. Because I think if we do it in pieces, it's too hard. Because then it's kind of like this is such a complex formula they've created that you're pulling in pieces. So I think if we can really kind of hold harmless and do it as a deep dive, we're going to be in a better place. Because otherwise, we're just going to all pick it pieces of it. So does that? And go back, you can watch the video, because I think it's still out there, right? Like, I think we literally talked about enrollment, and he was like, no, not exactly, so.
But one piece of that is the foundation budget, and as it rises, that rises in your minimum contribution if it stays the same.
But it's not going to stay the same as the issue.
Right, it'll go up incrementally, but if we can add more students and stabilize the students, at least there's several factors, yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
So hold on. So we got Chris and maybe Beth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Chris, go ahead.
If Beth was first.
I can't tell if Beth would. Beth, did you have something, or you may not have? I thought
No, I'm okay. I'm
You're good. All right, go ahead, Chris.
Dawn, I certainly appreciate what you're saying in terms of keeping our students in district and attracting others. And in my mind, one of the most inexpensive ways to do that is what we're trying to do with our culture initiatives, right? We're trying to lead in terms of making this district one that people are, thrilled to be a part of, right? And so anything we can do in that area, I think, is the quickest and least expensive way to maintain and attract more students to the district.
Right.
Fred, and then let's go back to...
I think, Don, I think you're, right on the cusp of, what I was trying to articulate as well. We went from 4,000 plus students down to, 3,200? 3,300 right now?
35.
And when you go down and they don't change your aid, that's where that big hold harmless nutshell is. So that's one of the big things that we're fighting. Anything we can do to increase our student population, I think, is the way to go. I mean, how many kids are going to charter schools out of here?
I don't know off the top of my head. So I look at, if our enrollment goes up, your class sizes go up too. So I think there's a balance there.
Right.
We just got to our, So I agree. I'd like to keep our kids, and I'm looking at the numbers now, but if you look at where we're losing students, it wasn't necessarily moving to the charter. You're looking at your K students not coming in. One of the pieces around full day K was making sure our kids started here. So I'm hoping over the next couple of years that you will see those charter students not leaving, going to Rockland, going to East Bridgewater, going to Abington, going to charter for K, that they're going to stay here. So I think looking at our K numbers up front, we have a good K class, but I think it's going to level out. And then we have to make sure we have competitive programs at the secondary level, 6 through 12, so students aren't going to privates or to vocational schools. So that's where Dr. Jones, Mr. Howard, his group, we're talking about innovation pathways, early college, and then dual enrollments, making sure they stay here. I also agree with Chris, making sure that kids want to come here and they have things to do. George's task of related arts, making sure kids are like, I don't feel like I'm in middle school, can I go to BC High or, whatever. So I think the enrollment piece is there, but, I do want to let John get back to where we're at.
Well, real quick, school choice?
So hang on, Fred, I want to get back. We're jumping from hold harmless to school
Those two
choice.
words don't go together.
We get, because I think what we
Are we
want to...
losing enrollment because we've stopped school choice? And if we can attract school choice students, will they add to our enrollment?
Yeah, no. And I look, and I appreciate like everyone's ideas, but let's take it sequentially. Let's get through the 5-year plan, and then we can certainly have a robust. I think we probably need to meet and kind of maybe tee that up. Have a fun night on Hold Harmless, and then we can certainly kind of go through other pieces. But this is really, I think we want to walk through the document, and then we can certainly, again, we can have a whole school committee meeting on the 5-year plan if that's what we want to do and go line by line. How we want to do it, but if we can kind of get back to where you wanted to at least get through high level.
So that was just the cover page is the cover 2 pages are the assumptions. Based on those assumptions, there's a 1-pager after that has the fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 28 revenue expenditure comparison. It has a revenue description, expenditures. Actually, I'm sorry, it's 2 pages. 2 pages. A revenue description at the top left, and then actual across the top, and then budget. Based on those assumptions that you saw earlier, this is the 10-year plan of actuals and budgets. So I think is it 4 going back and then 6 going forward. As the fiscal year 22 amounts become actuals and finals, I'll add them in there, and you get clearer and clearer. We'll move everything over, and we'll be probably looking at fiscal year 29 as we go forward. So that's what the 10-year look back and forward looks like, those 2 pages based on the assumptions. And then the rest of the pages are each year's statutory formula of just the general fund stuff based on those other assumptions. So there are 2 pages to fiscal year 24's statutory formula, 25, 26, 27, and 28. So based on those assumptions, I did out the statutory formula for where all the other numbers come from. So this is kind of the first pass, and then again, the second document I talked about earlier is related to debt. There's just assumptions about debt, which I put numbers in to get the discussion going. We haven't had any debt discussions at all with either town. So I'm trying to give an overview and be as brief as I can without...
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think it was trying to get a high level, get it in everyone's hands, and then, again, it's the committee's pleasure. We can kind of go through this some more at budget subcommittee, or we can, if folks want, we can put this on the agenda next meeting, and we can spend a lot of time on it. So what would you like to do in terms of, do you have questions that you think we want to put this back on and kind of do it?
I'd rather see it come before the whole committee, and let's tear it apart and go from there.
Is everyone interested in doing the same? Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess my preference would be to let the subcommittee do its job and work through some of the stuff, and then present to the full committee and have us look at it. I don't want to get into overstepping into subcommittees, whatever subcommittee it is.
Thoughts?
I agree also.
So, and I mean, look, those meetings, I guess the meetings are open. So, I mean, I guess we can certainly have another conversation, and I think there's a lot of assumptions that are in this. And again, Fred, to your point, we can go through every one of these. But I think ultimately this is going to be a living document that's going to continue to evolve. There are some big pieces that we've already talked about that we need to address in terms of whether it's hold harmless and some of these other things that it might just make sense to do that with the full committee. So, David and then Fred, go ahead.
Also, keep in mind the 5-year plan isn't the end-all be-all. It's a tool for long-term measurement. So as Chris just said, it's a living document, and it will fluctuate as the assumptions change and as more information comes to light. So what it says today might not necessarily be what it says a month from now, because that information could change. But currently, this is what we're projecting as a baseline for level services. So keep in mind that if you see a deficit 3 or 4 fiscal years down the line, that's because with the current assumptions being made, that is what we're looking at. But those numbers will change and obviously not reflect what the numbers will be in a few months, if that makes any sense.
Right, go ahead.
Thank you.
That's fine, and that's obvious, but if we're going to be going over this as a document, and we're going to be getting prepared for budget season as it's up and coming, one of the main charges of a school committee member is budget. That's what we're responsible for. I think it should be the whole committee that sits here and, goes through everything and has a good understanding of it, other than just a subcommittee reporting out.
Yep, and I think there's probably a balance between those two, right? So I think, to David's point, if we're having a budget subcommittee and they're meeting regularly and they're going through this and we're sharing it, that's going to lead us to conversation. Certainly, the budget subcommittee is not charged with approving or building the budget.
Right, but what's happened now is we have this document, we're getting a report, and I know myself, I have a lot of questions about what's in the report, and it's, well, geez, we don't, let's do it another time, or et cetera, et cetera. I think that if we have a dedicated meeting toward it, everyone gets to participate.
Okay.
I just want to note that it says this is projected for level services, which means no added services, right? And so that to me doesn't make sense to hash this out when I am a big proponent of getting related arts into the middle school, at least starting there, and that's going to be an added expense. We're talking about changing school start times. That could possibly also be an added expense. So to hash this out with those pieces that are unknown right now doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think the word projected here is projected based on this is all we can afford. We need to keep the services where they are, because I think as a committee we've decided, or we would like to decide, that we want to keep the services that we have. We obviously can't cut full day K, right? So that's a big expense. But I think as we get closer to our budget and looking at that when budget season comes, but a projected number, that's the budget subcommittee's piece. And personally, I don't want to break down a level services budget. I want to break down a budget that's going to add services.
No, and I get it, and so let me throw this out there as a solution, because I think, again, we have to kind of respect everyone's desire across the committee and what they want to do and kind of how they want to process information. So the simplest thing would be is, at some point, maybe in the near future, we can dedicate a budget subcommittee and just cross-post it with the full school committee, so that if the entire school committee wants to come, but we're not voting anything, we're just going to work through it. So again, I don't have an issue with folks being comfortable with the information, because that's what I'm trying to avoid. Like, I hear what Fred's saying. Like, I don't want to just have Fred's got like 30 questions, and I don't want to be like, yeah, Fred, we're going to answer those in budget subcommittee, but we don't know what your 30 questions are. Like, that doesn't feel right. So I think that's where we can do that within budget subcommittee and kind of work through it. And again, I don't have an issue with school committee members wanting to participate in that process. That's my thoughts.
And that was.
But David had something.
Oh,
I think.
sorry.
Or sorry, Chris. It was you and then David.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we're all. I mean, you wouldn't lock the door and keep
Correct, it's an open meeting.
Right? So it's,
I think we would just want to post it so that if we did have a quorum of school committee members, it would be okay.
Yeah,
that's all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, even our last meeting that we had last week, we had a school committee member.
We did.
We welcome people to attend and be a part of the meeting in the sense that they can hear what's going on and see what's going on. But I think the viewpoint that we've taken as a budget subcommittee, and Steve and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, is that we've dived into the 5-year plan and looked at the nitty-gritty, and we are here developing a baseline level services plan, because now we've, as a school committee, have approved 4 working groups, 3 that we have turned into working groups, and 1 that's now superintendent goal for early start times. And now we need to figure out how much that's going to cost and work out these scenarios like we did last year. We endorsed scenario 3. That turned out to be the budget we voted on. So I think, as to Hillary's point, as we get closer to the budget season, we have more accurate numbers and we have more concrete numbers at that, then we're going to have more conversations, and the 5-year plan will absolutely be on the school committee agenda, and us as an entire school committee will be discussing it, because at the end of the day, it's 2/3 of the school committee that needs to approve a budget, not the budget subcommittee. So yeah, we will spend the time looking into the numbers and making sure everything's accurate, and use it as a vetting process to make sure we're in the best position that we can be in to succeed as a school committee, because the budget is everything in terms of providing services for our youth. But at the same time, I think it would be appropriate to let the subcommittee do its job, and then as we get closer towards the budget season, we can spend several months talking about the 5-year plan and have it as an agenda item for the full school committee. So that's kind of the viewpoint I'm taking. It's almost similar to like a regional agreement amendment committee or RAP committee at this point, where they're going to make a decision, but it's going to come back to us because it needs to be ratified by the entire school committee. So it's not that any school committee member is not going to have that that opportunity, but the budget subcommittee needs to get more concrete numbers going forward so we can have that thorough conversation, and so there isn't 30 questions, because hopefully we'll have more answers at that point. So that's kind of the viewpoint that at least I've taken, and obviously the subcommittee can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that would be our best bet so we can be as efficient as possible and put ourselves in a position to succeed as a full committee, and in the long term, our youth will succeed as students.
And no part of that takes place in a televised meeting that the public obviously is encouraged to come to, and the public is aware of, and it's on YouTube or recorded for, future viewing at someone's leisure, so that we can be informing the citizens at the same time. And I think that's, there are things that get made behind the scenes in the kitchen. Yeah, you guys are going to make the stew, etc. But I don't believe that one meeting before we end up disseminating a budget, this is good information. Okay, it's a working document, it's a living document. But the questions of how assumptions are made, how things are happening, I just think it's worthwhile to have a meeting and have everybody's input on that, other than just the subcommittee.
A motion or a vote? We've gone around on this.
Yeah, no, so I mean, look, I think the game plan for tonight was to get the 5-year plan out in everyone's hands so they could actually see it formally. And then from there, we can certainly kind of go from there. What I would suggest is, I don't know if the next budget subcommittee is going to be fully dedicated to the 5-year plan, because I know there's some other things that we need to do, like the whole harmless meeting we've been talking about.
And scope.
Right, and scope and other things. But I think certainly in the next month or so, we should be able to have a budget subcommittee, cross-post it, and we can go through any questions pertaining to any assumption that anyone has, both here or publicly. And that should be we've been doing that for over a year, so I think that's been a good venue. That might be the easiest way to do it.
Just real briefly,
Yeah.
I think this is fantastic. We've never done this transparency-wise for our towns. Like Hillary said, this is level services, right? This is the bare bones. This is what we're living with now. This is what our kids need at minimum. So the towns can see this. Yes, living document, yes, may change, but this is where we're at, and this is what contractual increases look like, right? SJ services and staff number one. That's the cost of our staff. So I would add that. Thank you.
Sure. You're here. You've sat here for an hour and a half, so. Yeah, I can look at the presentation.
Just say thank you. I'm super impressed by this. I really like the 5-year plan. Thanks for the work.
All right. Thanks, Sean. All right. Let's.
So can you give an attaboy to John? John, I just want to say thank you for putting this together.
John,
through the issues we had, understand John has been working really hard, and this was a process for him. So again, thank you for doing this for the town, for the selectmen, for boards of selectmen, and for us as we work through this.
Yeah. So, thank you, John. I think the most important thing is you've helped us build a process.
Yes.
Right. So this is, I think, to all of our points, like this is not like, oh, we're done. Like this is a process that hopefully will help us make better decisions. But we also all have to understand what's going in there. So thank you, John. All right, moving on. Where are we at? Surplus.
Yep.
It's in our packets. Yes, I remember seeing it somewhere. Do we need to vote this?
Yes.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the surplus request as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just discussion. This doesn't mean we're throwing these books away. Okay, we're going to look to see what we can do with them. They're library books, so we pared down the library. So we're going to give rights of, to both Whitman and Hanson Library before these aren't just going away. But these are books that our librarian has pared through, and they haven't been opened in 25 years either. Mm-hmm. So we have them out there. There's 2,300. We'll be out to both towns, and if not, going somewhere. The one thing that I would say is, sometimes folks like, can you send them to different countries or whatever? They charge us for that. It's an expense. It's a huge expense. So people are like, hey, can you send them to wherever? They bill us for that shipping and things like that. So it's an added expense. So we will, if voted surplus, we will reach out and make sure that these books go to homes or people that want them.
Any additional discussion? All right, if not, we'll move to the vote. Roll call. Steve?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. David?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Subcommittee reports. Budget Subcommittee, David, you want to report out?
Yeah, so the Budget Subcommittee reorganized last week. They nominated me as chair. Steve has been nominated as secretary. Michelle Lindbergh's also going to help out with the meeting minutes and recordings. We discussed a couple things. Most of it pertained to our scope document. As you guys may have remembered last year, the Budget Subcommittee created a scope document outlining the members of the committee, our objectives, some of our goals for the entire fiscal year. Basically just a rundown of what we're at, where we're at, what we're trying to do, and some things that we're going to look to during that fiscal year. And then with the intent to send that over to the Finance Committee of both towns and to the Board of Selectmen after the scope has been approved by the Budget Subcommittee. We've talked about some of our objectives, some things that we want to look into. I know Chris had already mentioned hold harmless. We want to spend a lot of time really fleshing that out, making sure we have accurate information to present to the full school committee. From there, we also want to talk about OPEB and a couple other items. We're really just trying to focus on what we want to do this particular fiscal year. So right now, on October 5th, I believe, when we meet again, the Budget Subcommittee tasked me with amending the scope document and presenting it back to the subcommittee during that meeting. And then we'll go from there and then talk about what we're trying to achieve from that point onward. So that's kind of where we're at. We're just trying to continue working on what we tried to achieve last year and can follow up on that. And then obviously the 5-year plan as well. So that's kind of what we're doing.
And just one additional thing, I will be presenting to the Budget Subcommittee a new budget process, which will start earlier, to have them see that, and then for the October 12th school committee, that will roll it out publicly as far as engaging both communities in the process.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So Jeff just reminded me. So yeah, we plan on creating a more or less, we'll call it a budget calendar that we want to send to the town of Whitman and Hanson, outlining meeting dates and getting everything situated now, so there isn't any situations that come up late winter and early spring, and then go from there. So yeah.
And again, all that stuff will flow to the committee first. So, okay, building. Yes.
And just as a point of reference, you may want to give consideration where there will be a new governor. That governor is allowed to, I want to say it's 30 days or 45 days after the end of January, because they're incoming to get their budget out.
Okay.
You know, the governor's budget may be a very short season.
Gotcha.
Yeah, good point. Good call. Thanks, Fred. Building committee?
Building committee, you want to?
Sure. So, let's see. We have not met since our last meeting, but we have met. We had a workshop at the middle school where AI3 gave the committee, just some information and some different ideas of what they have perhaps on the table, depending upon how things go, and we'll hear more formally in the very near future. We did have a community forum night that was attended by about 13, George? Because I know you took the count. Parents, interested parties, very engaged. There was a lot of good questions. There was some discussion as to start times for our building committee meetings. We obviously want to try and accommodate any parents possible, but we are limited as to what we can do for dates and times, etc. So, but we will be looking at that. That will be on our agenda for our next meeting on September 27th. So we will take a peek at that and see what we can come up with. The timeline is for October, I want to say 12th, is it? For the pre-schematic submission to MSBA. So once that gets submitted, that's just the first quick little envisionment. As far as I know, Beth has been working with the work group, as well as Mr. Galvin, as a member of our committee, working on the space requirements and just getting a general feel of, what's allowable, what isn't allowable, how the best way we can do things within the project and have, proper 21st century learning for our students. Because I think the current middle school is more like 18th century learning.
Right. Okay.
So
thank you, Fred.
That's pretty much it.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Jeff, can you speak to the decision this committee will have to make in terms of the grade configuration?
Yeah, everything will have to come back from the budget, or from the building committee to this committee. So decisions made about the building will come back to this committee for vote on where we move forward. So the budget subcommittee, building committee is going to do different things, and then since the building committee is a subcommittee of the school committee, it comes back to this committee for a vote.
And the final decision is this committee to vote whether it's 5 through 8 or 6 through 8, in the middle.
What the project looks like.
What the project looks like. So can we get some advance information about that and education around it rather than just an agenda item where we're voting?
Once that document's presented, you will get it to the school committee as well. Yeah, it's a document in process right now.
Right.
Negotiations, you good? Yeah. All good? So negotiations, B, C, and D are still out there. We all met today. We've scheduled a couple meetings. B looks like we're going to wrap up one more meeting. C?
Next week.
Should be done hopefully within 1 or 2 more meetings.
Okay. And D?
Yes, I am.
2 more meetings.
Awesome. So we're in a good spot.
Great.
Okay.
And we didn't have it on here, but we do have subcommittee reports. So Don had a quick scheduling or clarifying point on ops and technology, yes?
Yeah, we're going to be scheduling a meeting, hopefully before October 1st, just to review what's due to the town of Whitman. But I believe, Jeff, you were speaking with them to let them know we would not have capital items finalized because Whitman has a bylaw that we need to provide our capital to them by October 1st, and we haven't worked with Tim, the new facilities director, yet.
So I reached out to interim TA, Mr. Lynham, with a request. He sent it to the chair of the building committee, or the capital committee, Mr. Essen, and I'm waiting here for a response. But Frank endorsed our delay that we would submit after our October 12th school committee meeting as our capital priorities for 2023.
Thanks.
Good.
Okay. We do have another executive session, so we will be going into executive session, and the only vote we will be taking to come out of when we come out of executive session will be to adjourn. The executive session will be to discuss the deployment of security devices or strategy with respect thereof, as so the chair declares, which I declare.
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All right, we'll roll call vote again. Steve?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Chris? I vote yes. Steve?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
It's been a long night. Chris?
Yes.
Brad? And Beth? Beth? All right, great. We're in executive session. Thank you, everyone.